Hello and welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for clicking onto this video. If you are new around here, don't forget to hit like and hit subscribe. Because I'm only on video 2, naturally I still have 0 subscribers, so you could be my very first subscriber, even if you just do it out of sympathy. Anyway, let's get into the main topic of this video, which is how to calculate your macros for weight loss. I will do another video on how to calculate your macros for weight gain. I'll probably do that one next or in the near future, but this video is all about macros and weight loss. So before we can start looking at your macros, we need to work out your maintenance calories. Now there's loads of different ways you can work out your maintenance calories. There's lots of freely available equations on the internet, but there's generally 2 ways I like to do it. Number 1 is track your weight for a week and track your calories for a week. If your weight doesn't move, then you're at maintenance calories. And the other way is if you times your body weight in pounds by 14 to 16, depending on how active you are. So if you're not very active, times your body weight in pounds by 14. If you're somewhat active, by 15. And if you're really active, by 16. So we'll use me for an easy example. I'm about 185 pounds at the moment, and I'm going to times it by 15. So 185 times by 15 gives me 2,775 calories. Now the thing is with maintenance calories, it's all estimations. Your calories or your maintenance calories are going to fluctuate week on week, day on day, depending on the type of food you eat, the type of activity you do. If you do any activity, the amount of steps you do, the amount of sleep you got. If you're a female, time of the month. It's all estimations that fluctuate. So it's a range really, but we have to work to one specific number. And if that number is making you gain weight, obviously we've got a little bit too high, so you just drop those calories down a bit. Now that we've estimated your maintenance calories, we need to create a calorie deficit. So I'm sure you've heard before, in order to lose weight, you have to create a calorie deficit. That's just the way it is, unfortunately. If you're not losing weight, you're not in a calorie deficit. If you're not in a calorie deficit, you won't lose any weight. When it comes to creating that deficit, you can create a small, a moderate, or a large deficit, depending on things like your starting weight and time frames, if you've got any holidays coming up, weddings, anything that you're training for, etc. So when it comes to creating a small deficit, you want to go 10 to 15% below maintenance calories. For a moderate deficit, 15 to 25%, and for a large deficit, 25% plus. Generally speaking, if you can lose it a bit slower, it's better because you're more likely to preserve muscle mass, it's more sustainable, you'll be less hungry, etc. So now that we know how to create the deficit, let's go through the maths. Let's use myself as an example again. So my maintenance calories from before, where I times my body weight in pounds by 15, were 2,775. So I'm going to go for a 15% deficit. I've got time on my side, you know, I can take my time losing the weight. So a 15% deficit, I'm going to times the 2,775 by 0.85% because that'd be a 15% drop off. So times 0.85 equals 2,358 calories. So that should be a deficit for me, a small deficit. If you do all the maths and you are tracking your calories and you've not lost any weight by the end of week 1 or week 2, then I would just decrease them a little bit further because, like I say, it's all estimations. You might not actually be in a deficit. You might have just gone a little bit too high with your calories to begin with. So now that we've got your calorie deficit, we need to work out your macro distribution. So when it comes to macros, you've got 4. So you've got protein, fats, carbs, and technically alcohol is a macronutrient. When it comes to prioritizing these macronutrients, protein is always number 1 when it comes to weight loss. So the reason protein is number 1 is because we want to preserve as much lean tissue as we can. We want to preserve as much muscle mass as possible. If you are, let's say you and a twin are doing exactly the same activity, you're in the same calorie deficit, you're losing the same amount of weight, however, you're doing plenty of strength training and you're eating plenty of protein, and your twin, not so much. The twin might lose 50% body fat, 50% muscle mass, which is obviously not going to improve your body composition, whereas you might lose 90% body fat and 10% muscle mass because you're eating plenty of protein to preserve muscle mass and you're doing your strength training. The other advantage of having a high protein diet is the thermic effect of food. So the actual digestion process of food requires energy, and protein has a much higher thermic effect than other foods. So protein is 20 to 30% of this energy content, fat is 0 to 3%, and carbohydrate is 5 to 10%. So just by having more protein in your diet, you burn more calories through the digestion process. Now, when it comes to calculating your protein intake, what you want to do is take your body weight in kilos and times it by 1.8 to 2.2 grams. So chuck your scale into kilos, or take your weight in pounds and divide it by 2.2. So I'm 185 pounds, divided by 2.2 is 84 kilos. Now, for the reasons I just mentioned, it's better to have higher protein, go slightly higher on that range. So if I take my body weight in kilos and times it by 2, for example, so 84 by 2, 168 grams of protein.
2 plus 2 is 4, minus 1, that's 3, quick maths.
Now, there's 4 calories per gram of protein, like I said earlier. So 168 times by 4 equals 672 calories. Now, we would take 672 calories away from my deficit, which is 2,358. So 2,358 minus 672 equals 1,686 calories left from fats, carbohydrates and alcohol. Now when it comes to calculating your fat and carbohydrate intake, the data shows that if calories and protein are equated, then fat loss outcome is the same. So whether you have slightly more calories from fat within the remaining 1,686 or slightly more calories from carbohydrate, the fat loss outcome is the same, because if you have more fat, you burn more fat but you store more fat. If you have more carbohydrate, you store less fat but you burn less fat. Because we're speaking within the specific context of weight loss, the fat and the carbohydrate distribution just doesn't matter too much, because when calories and protein are equated, fat loss outcomes or results are the same. If you were a full-time athlete or an endurance athlete, then the carbohydrate intake would be a priority, but this video isn't for full-time professional or endurance athletes. This video is for people who just want to lose weight and get into better shape. Use your own personal preference and palate. So I know personally that if I don't have enough carbohydrates, my training goes to shit, I feel awful, and I just love carbohydrates, so cutting those out would ruin me. Sorry the light keeps changing and you can hear rain in the background. My amateurish setup / non-studio is not well equipped for this yet. Hopefully I'll have a proper studio at some point. The last bit I want to talk about though is how fast you can expect to lose that weight. So you may have heard before that it takes roughly 3,500 calorie deficit to lose a pound of body fat. Hopefully that does all come from body fat and not muscle mass. So you need to work out your daily deficit. So what was it for me before? 2,775 maintenance, take away 2,358 calories, leave me with 417. So my daily deficit is 417 calories. So 3,500 divided by 417 equals 8.39 days. So it takes me about 8.4 days to lose a pound of body fat. Or if you want to do 417 times 7, as in 7 days, that's just shy of 3,000 calories. So just shy of a pound per week. So not very fast. Now obviously that'd be different if it was a moderate deficit or a large deficit, because I went for a small deficit before, but hopefully that gives you a good idea of how fast you can expect to lose the weight and you can work it out for yourself. Actually, one more thing I want to mention as well is what makes up your daily calorie expenditure. So there's 4 things. There is your BMR, which is the biggest chunk of it. So BMR is basal metabolic rate. That's basically how many calories it takes to keep you alive, to keep the lights on. Then you've got your NEAT activity. So NEAT activity is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So me fidgeting around right now, steps, I mean walking is technically exercise, but it falls under the NEAT bracket. And so yeah, just general day-to-day movement. Obviously if you sat in your arse all day, there's not much NEAT going on. If you're a builder or a bin man or something and you're constantly on the move, you're going to have a much higher NEAT. Then you have the thermic effect of food, which is the thing I mentioned before. So protein has a higher thermic effect than carbohydrates and fats. And finally, exercise itself. Now exercise actually makes up a very small percentage of that daily expenditure. The majority of it will come from BMR and NEAT activity. What you can do obviously is raise that NEAT activity to create a bigger deficit. You can't really do anything about your BMR apart from put on extra muscle mass, which is a very slow process. Increase activity and increase the thermic effect of food. The type of activity you do will also influence the calorie expenditure. So if you're someone who is just a recreational athlete who does a few strength training sessions per week and lots of steps, you're going to burn more calories probably from doing 10,000-15,000 steps per day than the 3 strength training sessions you do. Whereas if you're an endurance athlete, a triathlete, and you're running, cycling, swimming on average 4 hours a day, you're obviously going to burn more calories from that activity than you are from your NEAT activity, because your NEAT activity is probably going to be quite low because you're resting from all the activity that you've done. And just to summarise, calculate your estimated maintenance calories, calculate your deficit, calculate your protein intake, and then the fat and carbohydrate distribution is up to you and your personal preference or palate. Thank you so much again for watching through till the end. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you're updated with more content like this. Again, it's just going to be more educational content going forward, some challenges, some training videos, etc. Thank you so much, and until next time.